What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Football Diary, bringing you current and historic content every single day. It's a weekend, meaning we are doing historic football content. And this idea actually came from our TikTok. Now, we talk about it every once in a while in our videos. If you ever want us to talk about any subject, whether it's current football or historic football, we will absolutely do it. Whether it's a player historical bio or it's a player versus player debate, current or historic, we'll talk about. We've done a couple of current player debates. We did one a long time ago talking about Jerry Rice versus Randy Moss. But this one is coming from TikTok. Somebody asked us to do Barry Sanders versus Walter Payton. I'm going to say right now, I think if you're making a top 3 running backs of all time list, these guys both absolutely have to be up there. I think them and Jim Brown have to be your top 3. I have a pretty set list. However, I see the case for having, other lists that other people have. So comment down below, who do you have, Barry Sanders or Walter Payton? Now, of course, one of my favorite parts about this is that both of them only played for one team. That's always really cool when you're looking at 2 players that meant so much to their cities, to their franchises, to the history of their teams, as they are both probably the best players to ever play for the team. I think Barry Sanders is absolutely without a doubt. Walter Payton, pretty darn sure. I don't know, maybe Bears fans would argue like a Dick Butkus or somebody like that. There's some great players that have played for the Bears, but 2 historic franchises, the 2 of the top 3 greatest and best, most skilled running backs of all time. Let's talk about it. Who is the best out of the 2? Matt, do you want to go first, or do you want me to take the helm starting this off?
Well, I would just say I think that Walter Payton is viewed as like one of the greatest running backs in terms of very long career, like just when you hear the name,
yeah,
and just like a legend, right? And that's what you kind of remember. Really good, really quick feet. Also runs guys over all the time. If you watch videos of him, and he is really dominant as well. A lot of quick cuts. And then Barry Sanders is kind of known as kind of never had a good team. Played on the Lions. It was tough for him, but he was so talented. He was so quick. But if you actually go back into the stats, Walter Payton started, what was it? It was 33 more games, right?
Yes. Do you want me to run through the total stats? I can do that right now.
I was just going to say, it's way closer than you'd expect. Because when I was just kind of thinking of the 2 names before we kind of dove into the statistics, you would think, oh, Walter Payton has a lot more stats. But the reason there's a case for Barry is because maybe Barry was better, but he didn't play as long. But Barry's stats are so close, yet he basically played 2 less seasons, which is really 2 full less seasons. So you can get into stats if you want right now, but that would just surprise me a lot.
Yeah. So just kind of getting into it, Matt brought it up, the 33 games started difference in their career, 184 for Walter Payton, 151 for Barry Sanders. I'm not going to run through every single statistic. I'm going to run through the major ones. I think a big thing to point out, Walter Payton had about 800 more rush attempts. Okay. Barry Sanders only trails by 1,500 yards approximately from Walter Payton in like Matt said, seemingly 2 seasons. And if you want to look at Barry Sanders stats per year, Barry Sanders has, I believe, 5 1,500-yard seasons. And he only played 10 seasons, meaning there's a 50% chance that if he plays 1 more season starting 16 games, he passes Walter Payton. And Walter Payton was the all-time leading rusher when Barry Sanders played. One of the biggest things that you'll note in looking at not just running back history, but football history, when Emmitt Smith broke Walter Payton's rushing record, all-time rushing record, do you know what people were holding up? Do you know what people were saying? Thank Barry. Because there is no way Emmitt Smith is the all-time leading rusher if Barry Sanders doesn't retire after 10 seasons. In those 10 seasons, he was an absolutely amazing player. I think my favorite thing is, you look at Walter Payton, a bruising running back that also has quick feet. You got a nickname Sweetness for a reason. Walter Payton had 110 touchdowns. Barry Sanders had 99, 11 less touchdowns, and like I said, 33 less starts. And Barry wasn't like an ultra touchdown scorer. However, he was a phenomenal football player, as both these players were. In terms of rush yards per game, Barry Sanders, 0.2 yards off of being a 100-yard per game rusher for his career. Walter Payton was 88 flat. Those are the types of things that you have to look at. And then the negative, Walter Payton was a fumbler, okay? Walter Payton, 86 fumbles in his career. And if you remember, he had 190 games played, 184 career starts. That's almost a fumble every game. Almost every game. I'm sorry, almost every 2 games. But then Barry Sanders was about half of that at 41. Barry Sanders wasn't the most protective with the football, however, he was significantly more protective. Now, I don't want to knock these players like out of order, and so I'll add in Barry Sanders. He was a great runner. However, he is like the NFL's leading rusher for negative rushes. So if you look at all the negative rushes that Barry Sanders had, his total is over negative 1,000 yards in terms of total negative yards lost on rushing attempts, which is absolutely wild. Right? That is the most ever. He has the most ever career lost rushes, and then also the most ever total yards. I believe the statistics, that's not in like a lot of record books, but I did read about that being the estimated total. And so that makes
Barry's
sense.
Better though, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say right now, I think Barry Sanders is the best running back of all time. And those stats, those negative yards lost, if you watch any tape of Barry Sanders, any highlights of Barry Sanders, you'll recognize he gets hit in the backfield, he's going to bounce back, and he's going to curl around. And he's going to try and turn that nothing into something. And oftentimes he was able to do it. However, it also results a lot of times in poor plays that hurt the offense. But at the same time, yes, he had a lot of negative yards. He still averaged 5 yards per carry for his career, which is the second most all time behind Jim Brown, who averaged barely more yards per rush. That's the type of thing that you see when you see Barry Sanders. When you hear Walter Payton, Matt, you talked about it. Like you hear Walter Payton, you think greatness. Like you think just an absolutely amazing running back.
And rightfully so.
And absolutely rightfully so. You don't really hear Walter Payton's name very much when you're watching football. Currently, if you're talking about the Bears or something like that, they draft a running back, David Montgomery or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, Bears have had some great running backs. But if you're watching the NFL currently and you're watching a Ravens game, you're watching a game where a guy makes a nice juke or a big play, who is the echelon, the top tier of running and silky smoothness of running the football? It's Barry Sanders. You say, wow, that was like Barry. Like the way that he moves on his feet, that's like Barry. No disrespect towards Walter Payton, but that's what they say. It's similar to looking at, when you're playing basketball, when you got a piece of crumpled up paper and you're throwing it into the garbage, what do you say? You say Kobe. Okay, that's what you do. When you see a silky smooth, crazy cut, you think Barry Sanders.
And it's like Randy Moss. That's probably
you get Moss.
Yeah, you get
absolutely.
Moss. And it's not like, oh, you got buried. But when you think, and that's why, like, I remember when Lamar got drafted, that was a name that would get brought up so much. Like, let's stop player comping in the quarterbacks. Let's just appreciate the running ability and go, hey, this guy is special. Like, he can make guys miss left and right, similar to Barry Sanders, which is cool to see that. But no, Barry Sanders is definitely a special player. His feet are so incredibly quick. You brought up all the negative rushes. And I feel like some people might try to take something away from him, like, oh, well, that's on him if he's not a super like north-south runner, like if he's going east-west. That's not on him. Like his team just wasn't good. Like the Lions had bad offenses many years that he was there, and he would still put up 1,400 plus rushing yards. And there was a season where he had 3 touchdowns, and there's another season where he only had 4. Once again, I'm not saying like, oh, that's on Barry. Like Barry was doing his part. I promise you that Barry was doing his part. The problem is that he was not, like the Lions were not good in his time there. I believe they only won 1 playoff game in his whole career.
Yeah,
which is really, really sad. We saw a similar thing kind of happen with Calvin Johnson when he was in Detroit, and he also retired early. Another thing, Barry could have played a lot longer if he wanted to. But there was, and we were talking about this before, there was no motive for him to do that. Like he had done what he was going to do. He was just kind of, I think he was just kind of over it. And that should be something like, I think people get like a bad rep if they retire early. If this dude wants to retire early because he's balled out his whole career and he's like, hey, I've done it all. I'm ready to be done. I've shown that I am one. I in your opinion, and I don't know like where I'm on this, but in your opinion, he's the greatest running back of all time.
Yeah,
that's totally fair. And so, and also, it's again not to take away anything from Walter Payton. great player, Hall of Famer, 9-time Pro Bowler, just has a ton of stats. But I think Barry Sanders is a little bit better, not by a ton, but I think just like his game to game like numbers compared to Walter Payton, I think that's what really tells the story. I will add, Walter Payton was probably a little bit better of a pass catcher.
He's also a better thrower. Walter Payton
really?
was known, I believe Walter Payton had 8 career passing touchdowns in his career. He was known for the halfback pass. Barry had a 25% completion percentage for his career. So it does not have Walter as the quarterback. But yeah, as a pass catcher, Walter is definitely superior.
Yeah, I think he had 5 more touchdowns, like 1,500 more yards. And keep in mind, this is like a lot. So we actually had 1,500 rushing yards and receiving yards, and that's funny. But of course, the receiving numbers are way down compared to the rushing numbers for these guys. That's something that also impressed me about Walter Payton is that he had some pretty good receiving years. Like he was consistently getting like 300 to 500 receiving yards every year in an era where that was not as big of a thing. So very impressive on that front. I mean, Walter Payton, hell of a player. I think these are two guys that like when you talk about top end running backs, they will always be brought up. And especially with the modern NFL, more running back by committee based, like these guys, their names are going to live forever. So it's fun to bring them up. It was definitely fun for me to go through and like watch some tape on these guys and just some highlights of Barry Sanders just destroying people, including the Buccaneers. For some reason, he just had their number.
If you watch half of his highlights.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see. And then Walter Payton, like I think Walter Payton was a little bit more complete of a player, but Barry Sanders was just some of the best feet ever in not even football, like in sports history, probably. Yeah. Because his toe tap ability is really, really cool. I'd like to watch that guy do some ladder drills, do the icky shuffle on those, because that's got to be something incredible. But that's kind of where I'm at on these guys. Very, very impressive. I would probably have to rock with Barry just because he does have somewhat better career numbers or better game-to-game numbers. But don't take that as us, forgetting about how great Walter Payton was as well.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about Barry Sanders is probably my favorite football player of all time. Like he is, if you follow our TikTok, if you follow our Twitter, you may look, oh, wow, there's 4 players on our logo. One of them's Barry Sanders. I love Barry Sanders. And not just for the player he was in the NFL. He started his collegiate career. He became the best college football player of all time, walked into the NFL, played 10 seasons in the NFL, was 10 times a Pro Bowler. You talked about how Walter Payton was a 9-time Pro Bowler. He played in more seasons than Barry, and he wasn't able to do 10 consecutive Pro Bowls. Like starting a career with 10 consecutive Pro Bowls and then retiring, every year having at least 1,100 rushing yards, which is the record. 1,100 rushing yard season is the record. They actually tied for this record, which is a bit ironic, but Barry has the most consecutive. Barry has the most seasons with 1,300 more or more rushing yards, tied with Walter Payton once again with 9. He's got the most seasons with 1,400 or more rushing yards with 70% of his seasons, 1,400 yards. Think about that in modern NFL. That's ridiculous. He had 5 1,500-yard seasons, like I brought up, 50% of the time, 1,500 yards. He also had a 2,000-yard season. And the best part about that 2,000-yard season, if you look at the final 14 games, he rushed for exactly 2,000 yards in 14 games. And why is that significant? Only one player has ever rushed for 2,000 yards in 14 games. His name is O.J. Simpson. He did it before they expanded the season to 16 games. He averaged about 140 yards per game, a little bit over 140 yards per game. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's never going to be done before. Barry Sanders did it in the final 14 games of the season. I believe O.J. Simpson had 1,406 yards. He had 2,006 yards. Barry Sanders had 2,000 flat. Like just that type of level of dominance where in 14 games, he's able to do that type of thing. And obviously that season he had a 2,000-yard year. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's able to do. He has a lot more records. Most 50-yard touchdown runs by a player. Number 2 is Jim Brown. He's got 46 games in which he had 150 yards from scrimmage or more. Guess who's number 2? Walter Payton. And he just played less. If you look at most career 100-yard rushing games, number 1 is Emmitt Smith with 78. Number 2 is Walter Payton with 77. And number 3 is Barry Sanders with 76. So unbelievable for how much less he played and how much more dominant he was. And this is, once again, not taking away from how great those other players are. But that shows how incredible Barry Sanders is as a player. In my personal opinion, I think he's probably a top 3 offensive player of all time. Like, you put him up there with Brady, Rice, and Barry, in my personal opinion. Like, he is a top 10 football player of all time. I think he's the greatest running back of all time. And once again, Walter Payton is absolutely a top 3 running back in history. You can flip-flop him and Jim Brown. I actually have Walter Payton too. So absolute monsters these guys are, but Barry Sanders takes the cake in my opinion. Matt, you said he takes the cake for you, but you said it was pretty close. I don't think it's super close. I do think it is close. However, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to comment other players you want us to do. We've done, so in terms of current players that we've done, we have a lot of fun doing it. It's a lot of fun to do the research, especially for the historic ones, doing Rice versus Moss, obviously this one. But in current terms, we did Burrow versus Herbert. We did Justin Fields versus Trey Lance. We have a lot of fun doing it. Comment your thoughts and opinions. Comment what you want us to do. We will see all of you again tomorrow with a current NFL topic.